obviously want to focus on the news yesterday from Moderna working towards a vaccine. What do we need to know about how quickly something that may work on a small portion of test patients before it can get to us?
Well, what we need to know is, first of all, that it works in a small number of patients, and it's exciting that the immune response has been a robust one. So we need to increase the number of patients to, first of all, see what kind of short-term, medium-term side effects there are, to see which is the best dosing, whether it's a single dose or a double dose. And then we need to do an even larger group of people to see that we get that protection. And then finally, we actually need to compare the virus in a real setting where we're seeing people who get the vaccine and who don't, and to see how protected they are. So at the end, and this is a many-month, usually it's a many-years process, this is going faster, we need to know that it's safe and it's effective. And those are the key things. And we can't shortcut either the effectiveness or the safety part of that.
How do we get there in that if lockdowns continue in different areas and people get the vaccine, they can't actually test it? I mean, do we see a situation where then they're exposed to the virus on purpose in order to really speed the process of the vaccine forward?
Well, so there are still going to be communities that where whether there's a lockdown or it's more open, you're going to be having spread. So there is that opportunity. But there is another approach, which is called a challenge model, and that is you take a carefully selected group of younger people and that are very healthy, and you purposely expose them to the virus. And there is considerable discussion about that. There obviously are ethical concerns and all, but we actually, have an article under consideration for publication that argues that in this situation, that is indeed the most that is an ethical approach, and an approach that we seriously need to consider to speed the process of determining the effectiveness and the safety of possible vaccines.
Can you give me your best guess as to, and there's so many vaccines being developed, on once we feel confident in the actual vaccine, how quickly do we get it to people like me or like you or regular people?
So, yeah, indeed, it's exciting. We've got 100 possibilities. There are 6 in clinical trials and 2 moving on. So normally it's a 5-year process. You do the clinical studies, then you start scaling up, and down the line you get there. And you finish each step before you go to the next step. Right now, we're talking about overlapping steps. Even starting, and Bill Gates is already planning to build 7 factories before he knows which vaccine it's going to be. So if we do all of that fast tracking, it would be spring next year earliest that it's out, and more likely the fall. But it'll take much longer than that to get enough vaccines for everyone that we need to immunize. So it's a bit of a haul, but we're going much faster than we ever have.
When you have this disagreement between the U.S. and China, and the U.S. threatening to pull back WHO funding, does that hurt? Does it crimp that development at all? How does that? What's the transmission mechanism there in the process?
Well, there are many organizations, international organizations, that are working together on vaccine. That they will press ahead, but it's not a good thing in the middle of a pandemic to start raising questions about the organization that has rung the alarm, that has been ahead in terms of already thinking about Africa and other places that needed support, and exchanging information. So, the World Health Organization has played a critical role in here, and they played exactly the role that needs to be played as that. I mean, they're the organization of 192 countries, the health people. It's our organization collectively. And so doing things that cast doubt on its effectiveness and credibility, we really need a single that leadership voice with everyone's confidence to lead, to help lead us through this pandemic.
So, and then in the meantime, the middle step, which is I'm not going to work from home until next fall because I won't make it, and my daughter won't make it, and my husband won't make it. So in the meantime, we're going to rely on a lot of testing and rapid tests and home kits, for example. What's the best calculated risk that people then can take to start resuming parts of their life while still being careful?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to realize that as we loosen up, and I think you sort of indicated this, as we loosen up, the virus hasn't changed. 95% of us are still vulnerable. So we will have some recurrent outbreaks. So firstly, we need to keep to those habits of good hand washing, wearing masks, keeping our distance to the extent possible. And then we are moving with tests that will give us faster results. And the Rockefeller Foundation has launched what we call the 1-3-30 plan to get us from 1 million tests a week to 3 million in the next couple of months to 30 million. And that 3 million to 30 million, that quantum leap will happen with new technologies which make accurate, fast, convenient tests really a regular part of our lives. And I think with the technology we have today, we can get there. So you can imagine that you go to, before you go to large events, you're tested, and I think that's going to be an important part of it, so that we can catch these outbreaks early, respond, and not wait until we have overflowing emergency rooms as a signal. We need that widespread testing.